I'm going to go back to some of these questions because they're really good.
Okay.
Plain red shoes. A lot of these you've touched on, so I just want to credit the names of the people who you've touched on. So, plain red shoes, is it easier or harder to portray an event you haven't experienced yourself? I think you've talked about.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. This is an interesting one, and by, not going to be easy to say this, Terry Tanil Gueto.
Terry Tone Glue. What?
Terry Gueto. Which part of Seawall did you find the most difficult to play?
Answering that name. I know. Pronouncing that. No. Which did I find? I find definitely the beginning. I always think the first.
Because you got to start.
You got to start.
Yeah.
And you've got. I always find the first. I always think the first 10 minutes of any play is the most difficult, but particularly for Seawall, I find the beginning just to make people feel relaxed. When the film, just to go, because you've got your nerves. When we were filming, you think, is this going to be all right? You know, you're a little bit more self-conscious, and then one sort of relaxes into it. So I think the beginning. Yeah.
Were there bits of the script? Because it's interesting for me as a writer, because quite a few people, such as the mighty Moriarty's Game, hello Ailish, do your homework, and a few other people, Amy Lula, probably Amy Lula, sorry Amy, asked about how long it takes to learn all the lines. Now, sometimes that's a question which you kind of think, oh, you know, it's just part of the job. But I think as a writer, it's really fascinating that actually the moments when the moments in scripts where people drop lines.
Oh, you're so right.
That's the writer's fault. It's the writer's fault.
No, it's not necessarily the writer's fault. It's something about that. You think, oh God, what's this? You're always like, you're saying your lines and then you're like, what the fuck is this fucking thing?
Often the same, it's the same knot in the script.
It's because it hasn't
Did you have them with Seawall? I can't remember if we had any with Seawall in the early days.
I'm sure I did.
I'm just wondering what were the specific ones.
When you don't, when something hasn't captured your imagination, you haven't fully understood. You don't understand, because I think you learn lines a little bit by osmosis, you know. And so I think if you haven't gone, I love saying that line.
Yeah, good.
You know.
Yeah.
And like I often think with diction, it's sort of a little bit the learning lines thing, and it's about when the voice person says, I didn't hear these words. And she stands up at the top of the theatre and you think, right, what are the words? And she goes, I never heard the words teletrodon. I think that's because I don't know how to pronounce it. But it's because you haven't enjoyed saying the word, you know.
I remember in rehearsal, like when we were rehearsing before the Bosch, actually, not even before we even went to Edinburgh, the bit that you found difficult was down to your lack of astronomical knowledge, mate. Frankly, you didn't know the difference between a galaxy, a solar system, and the universe. And I had to teach you. And then you get it beautifully. It's the solar system inside the galaxy, inside the universe.
Oh God, I'm still not sure I understand that.
Brian Cox, man. Just watch Brian Cox. Right, let's see how we're doing.
Okay.
A lot of these you've talked about. So you talked about for Cruel. I want to acknowledge these people who have been so generous to send in questions. Cruel Pumps has asked you about whether you have kids. If not, where you some of these similar situations. But you've talked about that. And Mary Vickers, what do you think? What part of the script emotionally the most difficult, and why? All right. So yeah, in the film. And I can speak not as your friend or as your collaborator, as your writer, but just as an audience member. It's astonishing what you do at the end of that film. It's astonishing when the detachment with which you tell the story, and every single night on stage, you nailed it. It was just, it makes the hairs on my very hairless arms stand on end. But then to go from that detachment, as you're talking about Lucy's death, to really plundering the despair of the fallout of that. A lot of people, it's what's really affected them. So Mary Vickers, and quite a lot of the people. I couldn't, this is lovely from Violet 2356. I couldn't refresh myself easily after seeing the Seawall film. Andrew, were you all right?
No.
The role has heavily sad feelings. Pocket ex-punk. What kinds of preparations emotionally do you go through to get into character for something like this?
I think the answer to that really, and thank you for saying those things, but now, I mean, this isn't just tit for tat stuff, but it's easier to do that when that's why I find working with writers of your caliber totally addictive. It's not hard for me to do that. It's not hard to. What I find more difficult is to not I think you just when something is written that well, it's your job. The most difficult thing I think would be the really bad version is to be overly emotive.
Yeah, great.
And I think that's what I maybe struggled with a little bit, because it's so awful, and you can also feel that people, certainly when doing it as a live show, you can feel that people are really, so you have to try and sort of play against that. And I think that great expression, we tell sad stories to entertain, is sort of true, you know, because it's sad enough. It's sad enough, so you don't want to...
Have you played Hamlet?
No, I haven't.
That's a crime.
Yeah, I'd like to.
You'd be very good.
I'd like to play Hamlet.
Just because I always think one of the wisest things about acting is Hamlet's speech to the actors.
Yeah, trippingly.
And actually, do you know it? Do you know the speech?
I don't know, but I know the one you mean.
And because he talks in there, one of the things he says in there is don't over-emote.
Yeah,
don't over-emote, just kind of do it simply.
Just do it
simply.
But sometimes, you know, you have to do something with a bad script.
When you've got a script as shit as the Seawall script.
Darling. What are we going to do? But when it's good, you don't have to do anything. You know, you don't have to do anything.